All right, and we are live. Now I just hit one more live. Go live here. There we go. We are now live on all things. Well, good evening to an episode, or actually maybe a future episode of Grace in the Grind, where I'm just going to be encouraging, equipping, and you know, empowering you guys to do all that God's called you to. Today, I wanted to come on and just have a conversation. And as you guys are coming in, just let me know in the comments where you're from, what's going on, how cold is it where you are. Florida does not participate in winter, so we want to make sure that we figure that out. So where I'm from, we have very, 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 very no, we had an 80-degree weather. So for all you guys out there throughout the world, we are sure that you had a whole lot more things. Tonight we're going to be talking about 10 types of uncoachable people, or 10 types of 10 traits that are holding you back from all that you are, your growth, that are holding you back from what you're supposed to be doing, that are holding you back. And we are live on multiple platforms, but the big thing right now is to really come to a place is if you're hit me live, do the live, say, hey, live, hashtag live, or do hashtag replay if you're in replay land. So that way I know that we can keep in contact and things like that. And we're going to be streaming here for a little bit. And I want to go over 10 things, 10 traits that really say this is holding you back. So 10 traits that are holding you back, or we can call 10 traits that are why you're uncoachable. But with all that being said, we are live. You could tell like this is awesome. So I'm setting up my office. So all you guys, I'm setting up my office to do this stuff, and I'm very excited. But with all that said, with further ado, I want to jump in and just dive into what we're here. As you're coming in, you can either catch the replay of this, because I want to honor the time of the people that are live with us, and I want to honor the time of the people that will be live with us. So, all that being said, let's jump into 10 things, or 10 traits that you may have, if you have any of them, 10 traits that will cause you to be uncoachable, or cause you to not follow, not grow. And I think that's one of the biggest challenges. One of the biggest questions is we must come to a place where we're growing. We want to come to a place where we are doing the thing. We are able to grow. We're able to push beyond our limits. We're able to really make the impact that we're supposed to be making. In order to do that, we have to grow. So without further ado, we are going to do 10 things. And the first thing that you and I may have, that you may have, or that you are in a place, I don't know. My mind just went off. So you had an ADH movement. All right, let's click in now. Here's the real one, and I'll edit the first part out at 3 minutes, right? 10 things that hold you back from growth, 10 traits that hold you back from growth, and maybe the fact that you might be uncoachable. So if any of these traits apply, please hit them in the comments. Let me know. Let's have a conversation. The first trait that could be holding you back, that could be the problem, is that you're the know-it-all. You're the know-it-all. The know-it-all is overconfident. The know-it-all is dismissive, and the know-it-all is very resistant to feedback. So they're overconfident, they're dismissive, and they're very resistant to feedback. And if you are somebody who struggles with this particular this particular trait, there's a lot of pride, right? There's a lot of pride that builds up with the know-it-all, because if you're unteachable because nobody can teach you, if you know it all, then you're uncoachable. If you're uncoachable, there's no growth that's going to happen, because coachable people grow, and growing people are coachable. And with that, you have to have a heart of humility. So if we're going to look at this and flip it to the other side, the way that the know-it-all comes to a place and says, hey, I want to grow and I want to be teachable, you have to have a place of humility. It's asking reflective questions, right? We want to make sure that we're doing very poignant, very practical things. So we ask questions. We go, hey, like when the reflective questions. So if somebody gives you feedback, you don't automatically dismiss it and say, that's not me. You just don't have it right. No, we go, could that be me? Could that be some way I act that I'm not real, that I don't realize? That could that be a blind spot? And I think these are the questions that we need to really ask ourselves if we're going to be teachable. Does that apply? So a heart of humility will overcome the heart of pride, and the pride is being the know-it-all. And so we show value in collaborating and learning and being curious, right? We want to be curious, we want to ask questions, we want to get out there and do things that are going to build us up, do things that are going to push us and allow feedback to come, because we don't need to know it all. That we just acknowledge that we don't know it all, and we get to a place and we say, okay, what do I need to know that I'm missing? So we're not a know-it-all. We want to grow. The second trait is, are you a victim? If the first thing is the know-it-all, like we're talking about 10 traits that may be holding you back from growing. If the first trait is the know-it-all, the second trait is the victim. This is a stance. This is a mindset. The victim mentality. You've heard this said. If you're a victim, you come to a place where you blame others, that you avoid responsibility, and you're stuck in negative mindsets, right? So we understand that the victim mentality, it's everybody else's fault. That the victim mentality means if I fail, it's your fault, not mine. And I think one of the markers of the victim mentality, and especially with the victim, is that that the victim will oftentimes do something and then fall back into these cycles of playing, oh, it wasn't me, it was so and so, or it wasn't me. Like they blame shift, right? Because it's a mindset that says I can take no blame. I'm already, people are out to get me, people are here that they're gonna hurt me, they're gonna do those things. No, but that's not the case, because people with victim mentality, we want to acknowledge first and foremost, there may have been a lot of trauma, a lot of something that they went through, but there is something much deeper that we have to understand about a victim mentality, is that it's developed over a period of time based on some events that have never been healed. And if you're trying to find yourself getting past the victim mentality, one of the major markers, if you want to grow and not hit yourself into a place of, not growing, you have to take personal responsibility. If you're not taking personal responsibility, you will live in the cycle of victimhood. And I think that's the reality of it, because we want to acknowledge what we've been through. We don't want to live there. And if you're a victim, you tend to live in dark and negative places while blame shifting or never taking responsibility for your actions. The people that grow the most are the people that take the most responsibility for them. This is a part that I think we have to make sure that we do. If you are going to grow, you need to take personal responsibility. If you don't take personal responsibility in your actions, not everybody's actions. I don't like this whole, you have to take all responsibility. No, you don't take all responsibility. You take what your part of the responsibility is. And therefore, what you're saying is, I will no longer be in the victim cycle. I will no longer be in this place of being, it's everybody else's fault. But what I will do is I will acknowledge this was my part. And when you come to a place where you're acknowledging these things, you get into a different cycle. You no longer into the victim cycle, because victim cycles will stunt your growth, will cause you to never move beyond where you are. But when you move into the other side, where you take responsibility and you focus on solutions instead of problems, you start to move into a better place where now you are able to grow. Because here's the idea, is that in order to grow, you have to be healthy. In order to be healthy, you have to come to a place of taking responsibility, because you could never heal what you're never willing to admit happened. You can never heal what you're too unwilling to actually take notice and focus on. So you want to heal, you want to get beyond that, but you start with taking personal responsibility. You start with saying, I will no longer be a victim. So the first one we talked about in this little thing was the know-it-all, the one full of pride. The second one is the victim. The victim needs to take responsibility. Now the third one is going to be the resistant. Now, this individual, the resistant, is an interesting individual. And I think there's a lot of people who have this place at some point in their life. At some point, you may be a resistant. And the resistant is defensive, avoids change, and unwilling to try new approaches, right? We understand that the resistant oftentimes will look very much like a fixed mindset. Now, I will tell you the fixed mindset is going to be different. And in our talk, we're going to actually go in and talk a little bit about the fixed mindset. But the first thing we understand is that this resistant person is automatically defensive, avoids change, unwilling to try new approaches. And so here's the idea, though. The resistant is just that. They resist change. They're not opposed to change. The fixed mindset is opposed to change, but the resistant isn't. They just need help, right? Because they're already defensive. Why are they defensive? Because they may feel inadequate. They may feel undervalued. They may be unseen. They may be unheard. They don't feel worthy. Whatever it was, whatever they went through, you get into these places where they're resistant. Resistance is just tension between where you are and where you need to be. And the difference maker is going to be, can you get over that tension to get where you need to be? Or are you going to be stuck in the resistance and you're going to stay where you are? Now, you will come to a place where if you stay where you are, the pain that you feel at some point will become so great that you're going to be forced to move. So the resistant will ultimately begin to move and grow, but only after the pain is so great. Don't let that be you guys. Be the person who is going to be like primarily going to move forward quickly without being resistant. But here's the thing, how do you help a resistant? If you're somebody who's resistant, how do you help yourself get through the resistance? Number one is you help the person who's resistant growth by celebrating small wins, right? But it's not just celebrating small wins. Like there are points, all right, let's go get a bucket of ice cream because we did something great. We want to make sure we do that. But if you're resistant to change, you want to celebrate the small win. Ice cream's good. We like ice cream, right? Let me know if you like ice cream in the chat. But like what you want to do in the midst of it, you want to show the resistant person that showing how changes align with their goals. Remember, a resistant person is resistant. They're not opposed. They just don't maybe understand how everything goes together. So if you're resistant, all we need to do is understand or teach you is how does your actions and your goals align, right? And if we can get the wins, we can celebrate the wins and we can start telling you, here's how this action aligns with this goal. The resistance will start to break, the tension will decrease, and you'll start to get to a place where you are moving forward. Remember, because these are just traits that cause us not to grow. These are traits that causes us to stay stuck. And not everybody wants to be stuck, right? You don't want to be stuck. You don't want to be stuck in where you are. You don't want to be stuck in any place. So if you're a know-it-all, if you're a victim, or you are the resistant, there are things we talked about and things you and I need to do. So what about the next one? So we're going to be moving fast here. And before I go on to the next one, just take a second and drop some likes, drop some comments. Let me know you're here. If you have any questions about what we're talking about, I would love to answer those real time. If you're on the replay, I will try my best to get beyond that. For you guys over here on TikTok, I will not be able to do a replay, but if you ask me some questions, I may be able to do a video for you guys. So all of that being said, so we're talking about 10 traits that keep you from growing, 10 traits that keep you from growing. So we talked about 3. So the fourth one is going to be simply this: the excuse maker. If you now, this we hear all the time. The excuse maker justifies inaction, often procrastinates, and lacks accountability. The excuse maker justifies an action, lacks accountability, and will procrastinate very often. I think I fell into this for a while and I made a lot of excuses, because here's what the idea is: when you distance yourself from the work, then you don't have to take responsibility for the failures. And oftentimes the excuse maker are trying to isolate and protect themselves from actually taking the responsibility needed to grow. And with that, the reality of this is that for the excuse maker, here's what you have to do: set clear, actionable steps and hold them accountable with compassion. We don't want to be angry. We don't want to be mean. We don't want to be those things with somebody who is truly trying to change, or truly maybe we're attempting to help change. But we have to have compassion and encouragement, because we oftentimes miss the compassion and encouragement, and we just want to give people our truth. But the reality is you'll do more with compassion than you will with hard truth. So if you shroud your hard truth in loving compassion, people are more willing to accept it than not. But I will tell you, with all of that being said, the excuse maker gonna make excuses, and you got to put the excuse maker in on blast, to where you're saying, hey, the excuses aren't cutting it. If you really want this in your life, this is what you have to do. This is where you have to go to grow. But in order to do that, we're going to set clear expectations, clear boundaries, and we're going to move into these places, because you don't want to stay stuck. You don't want to stay stuck. And then it comes into that. So that's the excuse maker. Now we're going to come in, and I mentioned it earlier, the fixed mindset. The fixed mindset's an interesting thing because there was a book called, I believe it was called Mindset. And it was a very fascinating book. And it really broke down mindsets into two things: fixed, right? We got the fixed mindset and the growth mindset. Now, where we want to be is we want to be in a growth mindset. And you've probably heard that. You've heard that we're all needing to be growth, because if you're not in a growth mindset, then you're going to be staying stuck. And there are a lot of people, based on one thing or another, that are in fixed mindsets. So here's some of the markers of a fixed mindset. They believe abilities and outcomes are static. Like they're just static. There's no fluctuation. There's no anything. It's just static. And the fears failure, avoids challenges. Because for somebody who has a fixed mindset, a challenge means that they're going to be forced to change the way they think. And a fixed mindset does not want to change the way they think. And that's why oftentimes you see people running around in circles, or the adage or the image that I love hearing or love telling is like, it's like rocking in a rocking chair back and forth, and you're rocking in a rocking chair, hoping you go forward, but the rocking chair never moves. And no matter how hard or how fast you go in that rocking chair, you'll never move forward. You have the feeling of moving forward, the feeling of progression, the feeling of movement, but without actually ever moving. That's where the fixed mindset is. It's they don't comprehend change. They don't want change. They don't comprehend anything beyond their way of thinking. And that's all they need. That's all they want. And to help the fixed mindset, we have to share stories of growth. Now, stories are powerful because stories are just testaments of what is possible. So you share stories of growth. Now, you may come to me and you may say, Jim, but I shared a story of growth. What about that? But the reality of that is you may have to do this dozens and dozens of times. You have to may do this, I don't know how often. And everybody has a family member, or somebody you're coaching, somebody who is in your classroom and in your congregation who is a fixed mindset. And because of that, you want to make sure that you're constantly sharing growth stories. The other thing is emphasize that failure is part of the learning process. Remember, the fixed mindset struggles with failure. It's a fear of failure. It's a fear ultimately of not succeeding. It's a fear of rejection. It's a fear of being inadequate, of inferiority, and all these things wrapped up into it because they don't want to be seen as less than. And because if they're seen as less than, then it breaks their whole mindset that says that's impossible. So we want to make sure, if you want to grow and you have a fixed mindset, let's talk about stories of growth, and let's just compassionately encouragingly move you forward. The next one that we come in is the overcommitted. Now, if you are somebody who is overcommitted, I have seen this in a lot of churches. I have, every time the door open, you see the same people that are part of like 16 different ministries. And then you wonder why the rest of the church isn't doing anything. It's because the 5 people are doing 17 ministries and everybody are just watching them. Or you get that in business, like the overcommitted, like you get people who are an entrepreneur, which is in the space I'm in, and you get people who are doing 900 things and about 875 of them they're not supposed to be doing. Like they'll then, instead of building their business, they will go to 40 different events. Instead of building their business, and events aren't wrong. I love events and I want to put events on, but they overcommit to events, or they overcommit to other people. Like, all right, I'll help you in all of these things, but then they're failing to actually do their own work. They're too overcommitted to go forward. They're just stuck. And the help for that is the overcommitted say yes to everything and lacks focus and clarity. Now, let me tell you something. The best thing in your life that you will ever do is say no. No is the most powerful word in the English language because it sets a boundary, it sets a parameter, and it begins to push you into a place that says, this is not what I'm willing to do. And then once we get confident at, we have to understand I'm okay with saying no. And the overcommitted is ultimately a people pleaser because they don't know how to say no. They're afraid to say no. They've been taught that if they say no, they may not be loved. If they say no, they may not be valued. If they say no, then their worth is now gone because their worth is tied to their outputs, their outcomes. So they have to be overly committed in order to find themselves at a place where they feel okay with themselves. That is a lie, because the more overcommitted you are, the less actual energy and less time you have to build anything of value, to build anything great. And I want to tell you something, and this is stuff that has really been a revelation in my life too recently, is that if you want to build a great structure of business, if you want to build something of impact, you've got to focus, you got to find clarity, and you've got to stop committing to everybody who asked you or says. Like people pleasing, there's no place for people pleasing on any arena. People pleasing is just people who are insecure trying to find worth. So learn to say no and come to a place to where your no is no and your yes is yes. Because when you do that, your yes actually becomes more powerful, right? Your yeses become more powerful and your time becomes more valuable. When you learn to say no, your yeses become more powerful and your time becomes more valuable. The next one is the perfectionist. How many of you guys deal with perfectionism? Let me know in the comments. Hit me up. Say you hit the ones. Do the ones. Do you deal with perfectionism? Trying to be perfect, trying to be that person? The perfectionist is overanalyzes, fears imperfection, delays progress to avoid mistakes. So the reality of this particular thing is, and then I got to go back for the overcommitted for 1 second. You know what? Let me go back to the overcommitted for a second because I don't want to do this. To help you get past overcommitted, number one is learn to say no. But number two is teach proper boundaries and prioritizing what aligns with your purpose. If it doesn't align with your purpose, it's automatically a no. All right. This is for the overcommitted. That's not for the perfectionist. This is for the overcommitted because I skipped over a part, forgot to go in there, so I'm going to backtrack. If you're overcommitted, there's a couple things. Number one, learn to say no. Learn to say no. Number two, proper boundaries. Boundaries are not control of the other person. It's control of what I'm going to do in response to what you're doing. And then after that, you're going to go in and say, how does my priorities align with my purpose? If it doesn't align, it's a no brainer. I was on a call earlier today and they were like, hey, join my thing. And my statement was, I love what you're doing, but I'm going to prayerfully consider if it aligns with the direction I'm going in, because in 2024, the rest of 2024 and 2025, I am going to be obsessive about if it doesn't align and moves the needle forward in my purpose, it's an automatic no. All right. That's how it goes. Then going back into the perfectionist, one of the challenges with perfectionism is the perfectionist became a perfectionist because they didn't get the love they needed as a child, because they believed that they needed to be perfect in order to be okay. Right. There has to be a perfectionism to say, there was a perfectionism that said, I have to be perfect to be loved. And that's a shame. I dealt with a lot of that growing up, and I became at least some level of perfectionist as an adult. And so if you're dealing with any level of perfectionism, then you've got to come in to say, hey, you can be okay without being perfect. You've got to launch imperfectly, because what happens is we need to be committed to the process, not the perfection. Because if we're committed to the perfection over the process, then we'll never launch, we'll never move forward, we'll never do anything of value. And so the perfectionist will, the perfectionist, to do this, we've got to encourage progress over perfection. Say that with me, like in yourself, progress over perfection. If you're dealing with perfectionism, then you have to shift your mindset to progress over perfection. Progress over perfection. Secondly, is to remind yourself of God's grace in your journey. Here's the deal. A lot of perfectionists use this perfectionism as a shield. I am guilty. It's a shield. Because here's the deal. If I'm not perfect, I don't launch. If I don't launch, nobody can criticize me. If nobody can criticize me, then I won't be rejected. And if I'm not rejected, I won't fail. And if I don't fail, I'm good. When all in reality, the problem is you're not launching what you're supposed to do. You're not doing all that God told you to do. You're not getting out there and sharing your voice, which is a beautiful thing that needs in this world. You're not making the impact. So you're sitting in your room, in your life, in an unfulfilled space, trying or wishing that you were so much more fulfilled. And all you have to do is stop being a perfectionist and start being a progressionist. Like, you have to go into being with progress over perfection. Progress over perfection. So let me take a second before we go on to the last couple. Hey Brittany, good to see you over here on TikTok. I'm glad you're with me, and you guys over here on Facebook and YouTube and Instagram. Make sure you take some time, show some love, share some stuff out, hit the follow if you haven't already. Let's continue these conversations. I will be building a weekly live show. I used to have a live show multiple years ago, but now I'm coming back to it. So we're a little dusting off the rust, pulling out God's, how God has gifted me. And we're going to be start sharing, over 2 decades of knowledge, of experience, of life, so that I can help you do all that God's called you to. And today we've been talking about 10 traits on, what's causing you not to grow. And for you guys here over on the talk, if you want to see the full video, head over to the red site, the YouTube, and just hit the subscribe. It'll be there on the live. Facebook, it's already there. So we're on the downward spiral. We've covered a lot here. And I want to make sure we keep this rolling. If you have any questions, drop them in the comments. I'll get to them. If I don't acknowledge you at first, it's only because I like to get through my little segment, because I snip these out and then I'll take that second and acknowledge you. So we really went over a bunch of stuff. So let me just recap some of these. So these are the 10 things that are keeping you from growing. You're a know-it-all. If you want the full thing, go back and check it out. You're a know-it-all. You're a victim. You're resistant. You are an excuse maker. You have a fixed mindset. You're a perfectionist, or you're overcommitted. These are so far 7 of the 10 that if you have these things, then you are going to cause a stunt in your growth. Because remember, healthy things grow, growing things are healthy. And if you have any of these traits, that's unhealthy, and it will cause you to stop growing or to not grow at all. So let's go on down on the downward spiral with this and say here's this. The next one we're going to talk about is the fearful. Have you ever been afraid of something? Like, maybe you're afraid of, and I don't mean like spiders or something like that. Spiders don't matter. Although sometimes you get to see these big spiders, you just burn the house down at the spider. But you're fearful. You've got a fear of failure, fear of rejection, fear of inadequacy. One thing that I've discovered recently that I didn't even know was the fear of invisibility. Like, fear of being invisible, that your voice is not heard, that you're not seen. Like, there's a fear of that. There's a lot of fears that travel, but here's what the baseline is. All fears cause you to run from the intended direction. You run in the opposite direction. So somebody who's fearful is paralyzed by fear. I mean, that's simple, right? If you're fearful, you're paralyzed by fear, failure, rejection, unknown, inadequacy, and fear, inferiority, all of those things. But you feel these places of fear, right? But here's the deal. What you refuse to confront today will stay with you until you do. So if you're running from your fear, you will always live with your fear, and you will never get to a place where you are confronting it and doing all that God's called you to, because you're stuck in the cycle of fight or flight. You may feel like you're confronting these things a little bit. You're like, hey, this is cool. And then, you're gone. And if you stay in this fight or flight mentality where your emotions are dysregulated, and you're constantly in this state of arousal to where you're like, I just can't do this. You'll maybe get a little, it's like a start-stop cycle. I'll do it, I'll stop, I'll do it, I'll stop, I'll do it, I'll stop, I'll do it, I'll stop. But the reality of it is again, you have something on the inside of you, something that's beautiful, something that's great, something that's powerful. And if you live in fear, you can never access this thing. So we've got to start moving ourselves into a place of courage. Courage will give us the overcoming spirit that we need in order to overcome the fear. Now remember, you've been around for a while, you know what courage is. Courage is doing something afraid. You're doing the thing that you need to do in spite of your fear. And we need to move into these places because, again, your voice is amazing. Your voice is powerful. And just get out there and be you. Well, what if someone doesn't like me? That's okay. There's a lot of people that don't like you. You're just going to have to accept that. And but here, even more than that, there's a lot of people who are trolls who will say mean things on the internet because their life is in shambles and chaos. So they start to spew that stuff all over the place to everybody around them because misery loves company, and people who are miserable want people to be miserable with them. But you shine your light. You shine your light in front of people because your light is powerful. Your voice is impactful. And if you're living in your fear, you will never live up to the place that you're called to, that precipice of your heights of your purpose, because you're always live at a lower level because you're controlled by fear. Is there a place where you're going to be like, where you're never going to fear? No, you're always going to have some level of fear, some level of challenge. But the idea is to do it afraid, build momentum, and just keep moving in the courage that you have in order to get all that God has put in front of you and to help all the people that God has told you to help. Right. And here's how we really help people who are fearful, right? Is number one, you help them focus on faith and take small, courageous, intentional steps. I think a lot of times we have the fear of the unknown, right? We understand that, where we have more this thought in our head, I'm afraid of what might happen, and we'll never try to see what will happen. And I think that's a real big difference. We've got to understand that what might happen is only might. It's only a wishy-washy word. What will happen, we won't know until we get out there and see. So we have to get out there, even if we're afraid, to see what will happen. And we may find out that what we thought could be true, but the honesty of it, the reality in the back end of this is that, well, so what? So what if somebody doesn't like you? That's okay. My wife and I were having this conversation the other day. She's been afraid to get on and do shorts, reels, whatever you want to call them, of her singing because she's a beautiful singer and she wants to sing. And she says, well, there's so many people that'll criticize, and she's very sensitive to criticism. And I said, well, think about this. This is a legitimate fear. We validate feelings, but feelings can be wrong, right? We have to understand in a mature way that your feelings are valid, but your feelings aren't always truthful. And when I said to her, I said, honey, I said, because we've been together 25 years. I love my wife. She's incredible. She's so much talent. And I said, why are we focusing on the one or two that's going to negatively impact you instead of the 10 or 12 or 15 or 20 that need to hear your voice? Like, why do we focus on the one or two negative instead of the crowd that is waiting for you to show up? And you may say to me, you may say, Jim, I haven't seen that crowd yet. And that's okay. What we need to realize is that you are in a process of trying to find your audience, and that takes time. But don't quit early because of your fear, because what if I get rejected? There will be people who will reject you. But that doesn't mean you have to reject yourself. There's going to be people who abandon you because they can't go where you're going. But that doesn't mean you abandon yourself. And we understand that if we harbor any type of fear, we have to do it afraid. And remember what I said, take small, courageous, and intentional steps to get to our goals. End of the story. And do this, and in the Bible it talks about diligence. Diligence is doing a small thing over a large period of time to create big impact. Don't worry about the big impact. Worry about the steps, because the little steps lead up to the big impact. And in 2 years from now, you'll look back and you're like, wow, look how far I come with how afraid I was. That's where that goes. Let me take a second here. Yeah, definitely. Thank you, Brittany, for becoming the #1 member of the team over here. I appreciate that. I love it. Thanks for the hearts, the love. You guys over here on Facebook, good to see you guys coming in. Remember, always hit the hashtags and the replays and the lives over here. And for you guys, we love you. Thanks for hanging out. We're almost through here. Coming down there. We got 2 left. on 10 things that keep you from growing. I promise you, if you find any of these in you and you start dealing with them, you will find yourself exponentially growing. And why do you say that, Jim? Because for the last 2 decades, last 20 years, 20 plus years, I've been working with leadership, personal development, personal growth, faith growth in the relational leadership, field. And with all of that, the reality of it is I've seen over and over and over and over that those people that deal with these fears, those people that get in there and start doing the dirty work, start doing the hard work, start exponentially growing, and they don't even realize it. But a lot of times we have anchor points, and I'm going to do another episode on anchor points and what that is. But a lot of times we have anchor points that keep us solid in one space for way too long. And that's where it becomes a problem, because we're stuck at an anchor point. And maybe that's a place where somebody hurt you. Maybe that's a place where somebody abused you. Maybe that's a place where somebody did something to you that was not okay. But you can't live in those spaces and stay tied to those spaces. You've got to move forward into spaces of growth, because you're not who your past is or who your past declares you to be. You're who God declares you to be, and who God declares you to be is not only in your present, but is also going to be in your future. And you're constantly growing, but you'll never grow while looking in the rearview mirror. You've got to move forward. So with all that being said, let's go down into the last two. The last one, the last to the last is the skeptic. All right. Now, I was somebody who really did lean into skepticism for a very long time. I was an atheist. Very long time. I did practice witchcraft and things before Jesus got a hold of me. When I say a long time, it was probably about 15 years of both. But Jesus got a hold of me, changed a lot of things. But as an atheist, there was a very heavy skepticism. And what skepticisms and skeptics really does, they distrust the process, doubts the coach's motives and capabilities, right? So a skeptic doubts everything until proven true. And a lot of times we can't live in these places where everything is sus until it's not. We have to trust. We have to get into places of trust. Skeptics can't grow only because they don't believe the person that's trying to help them grow. Like if a skeptic, basically hires a coach, the skeptic will always question the coach's stuff. And if I'm always questioning, if I'm always questioning the coach I hired, invested, and paid money to, and I won't listen to them because I doubt everything they say, I doubt their credentials, why did I hire them in the first place? Remember, you have to be teachable to be coachable. To be coachable, you have to grow, and to grow, you have to have all this stuff, and you got to start rooting these things out. And the reality of it is, if because of my past, if I doubt the process and think I know better, the know-it-all, and I doubt the process and I doubt your motives, like I don't think you have my best interest at heart because maybe I don't trust you, and I doubt your capabilities, even though you've shown me all the results, the problem lies with me. Because now I've got to squelch that skepticism and start trusting what my instincts and my eyes are telling me. And to help a skeptic is build trust through transparency and consistent encouragement. Consistent encouragement is a very big thing here, simply because people that are encouraged are oftentimes, the encouragement is the fuel for people to move forward. Encouragement is the fuel for people to move forward. And so a lot of time, and if you notice, we live in a place of discouragement. Every one of us in life are living in this place of discouragement right now in 2024. You see all the memes. We feel like it beat us up like crazy, and it feels like life is just lifing too hard. Like stop lifing too hard. But the reality of it is if we can't trust God's process, if we can't trust the coaches we hire, then we're left to be the authority in our own lives, and we have to figure it out. And if we're the authority in our own lives, guess what? If you could grow on your own, you wouldn't have needed to hire the coach or think about hiring the coach in the first place. Let that sink in for a second, because we have to at some place look at everything transparently and at face value and say, hey, this has to be true. I see the results, and trust that it's true. And then trust yourself enough to say, my intuition is telling me that this is okay to proceed, and trust God enough to know that God is true and he's a better leader than we're a follower. So let's make sure we go. And if those things all line up, just move forward. Skeptics can be very hard. And even Proverbs 3:15, it says here, it says, trust in the Lord with all of your heart. Skeptics don't trust in anybody other than themselves. So we have to move beyond skepticism if we're going to grow. The last one, the disengaged. The disengaged is an interesting group. It's the apathetic, shows little interest or effort, lacks motivation. You know, the disengaged are really, I believe, and this is where I think this kind of gets in, people who have been hurt so much and have, now here's the key, because there are people that have been hurt that this doesn't apply to. People that have been hurt so much, but has never done the work to overcome the hurt. That's a big distinction. People who have been hurt so much have never done the work to be overcome the hurt, healing, whether it be forgiveness and all that stuff, sit in a place of disengagement, because disengagement, I believe, heavily relies, or is at least a sister to depression. And a lot of times we're disengaged because we're depressed, because we're isolating from everything that's going on. And here's why you cannot grow in a disengagement. Because if you're apathetic and you're not interested and you're not around the people you need to be around to grow, you will not grow. Now, this is going to be a hard one because this is emotional. The disengager is an emotional thing, because apathy is a hard thing when you get to the place of apathy. And Colossians actually says, whatever you do, whatever you do, work at it with all of your heart. Like, put everything you got in it. The apathetic puts nothing. The disengaged puts nothing. They can care less. We see this in a lot of students at school. But here's how you do it. We have to learn to reignite passion. A lot of people, I'm going to tell you right now, they don't understand what their passion is. They don't understand what they're passionate about. They're like, well, I have no passions. It's because you spent so much time in your pain that you never dealt with the actual pain, that all you feel is pain. But the Lord has said that there is a passion. He says, I will give you a new heart when you accept him. So in the midst of having a new heart, passion comes with that. We just have to allow that process to take place. We have to trust that process, right? But so here's the thing. We have to ignite passions, connecting goals to their personal and spiritual purpose. So if we're going to the disengage, if we're going to re-engage them, purpose, personal purpose, spiritual purpose have to be, joined together and connected to the goals that they have in life. When your purpose and your goals meet and you put in the work, you will find passion will come. Oftentimes, here's one thing you got to realize. Oftentimes, passion is a result of action. We don't feel passion and then act. We act and then feel passion. Feelings are often the result of our actions. So we've got it reversed a lot of times. A lot of times we sit in these places where we say, I don't feel such and such, so it must not be the way I need to go. No, you set your goals. You make sure it's biblical. You set your goals. You set your direction, and then you start moving. And in time, you start feeling the things that you were hoping to feel. Like, I don't like the gym, but when I get there after the fight I have, and I get there and I start working out, the gym becomes easier because I'm already there. And I don't mind the actual working out part. It's the mental part of getting up and having to go and doing all the things, right? Feelings will always come as a result to the actions I take. So to the disengaged, we work on reigniting your passion by aligning your goals to your spiritual and physical purpose. And with that all being said, that rolls down for tonight. For you guys, TikTok, I'm gonna stay with you for a few minutes, but for you guys over here on the gram and on the Facebook and YouTube, we went over some stuff we went over the 10 traits on what keeps you from growing. Again, I'm just gonna run these down real quick for you guys. If you have any of these, you may have your reason why you're not growing as much. The know-it-all, the victim, the resistant, the excuse maker, the fixed mindset, the perfectionist, the overcommitted, the fearful, the skeptic, and then the disengaged. Any of those 10, or all of those 10, because some of them are very closely related, you will find yourself in a place where you don't grow. I might write a book off of that. The 10 traits why you don't grow. I might write a book off of that. But irregardless, these are why you may not be growing, why you're growing is stunning, why you don't feel like you're growing. So start to deal with these issues and you're going to find yourself growing. And with that being said, we're closing out today's show. And again, we're going to do a weekly show where we're devoted to, empowering, encouraging, and equipping you for all that God has put in you. And so thanks for hanging out here on the Gram and on the Facebook and YouTube. So we're going to say good night, and I will see you on the next time.